My husband asked for an open marriage over dinner. No anger, no guilt, just a calm smile and a glass of wine in his hand. "I just want honesty," he said. "Freedom. No more pretending." He spoke like he was offering me a gift, like I should be grateful. I looked at him across the table and realized something in that moment. He had already made his choice. He didn't ask because he loved me less. He asked because he thought I had nowhere else to go, so I said yes. Too quickly. His smile widened. Relief. Victory. What he didn't know was that 24 hours later, I would be sitting across from a man who never asked for permission. A man whose name people lowered their voices around. A man who didn't explain his power, because he didn't need to. When I told him my husband wanted an open marriage, he didn't laugh. He leaned in and said, "Be careful what doors you open. Some don't close." That was the moment my life split in two. My husband thought he had opened our marriage. What he actually opened was a world he could never compete with. And this time, I wasn't the one being replaced. He didn't ask for an open marriage during a fight. That was the first thing that confused me. No shouting, no slammed doors, no accusations, just a quiet Tuesday night. Dinner plates are still warm. The dishwasher is humming in the background. He sat back in his chair like a man who had rehearsed this moment. "I've been thinking," he said casually. "A lot of couples do this now." I didn't respond. He took my silence as encouragement. "It doesn't mean anything is wrong," he continued. "It's just practical." Practical. That word sat heavily between us. He talked about honesty, about evolving, about how monogamy was outdated. He never once asked how I felt, because this wasn't a discussion. It was a presentation. "I don't want secrets," he said. "I don't want resentment." What he meant was, I don't want consequences. I studied his face while he spoke, the confidence, the calm. This wasn't an idea he'd just had. This was permission he expected me to grant. "Are you already seeing someone?" I asked. He hesitated, just a fraction of a second. Not enough for denial, enough for truth. "It doesn't matter," he said. "This would make it fair." Fair. That's when I understood. The open marriage wasn't about freedom. It was about control. If I agreed, he got guilt-free access to whoever he wanted. If I refused, I became the obstacle, the unreasonable wife. Either way, he won. I excused myself and went to the bathroom. I locked the door, stared at my reflection. I didn't look angry. I looked invisible. When I came back, he was scrolling on his phone, relaxed, certain. "So?" he asked, not looking up. "What do you think?" I sat down slowly. "I think," I said, "if that's what you want, we should be honest." He finally looked at me. Hope flickered across his face. "I'm glad you understand," he said. That was the moment I knew. He didn't see me as a woman with choices. He saw me as a constant, a safe background, someone who would still be there while he explored. I smiled, a small one, controlled. "Let's do it," I said. His shoulders relaxed instantly. He reached for his glass. "To honesty," he said. I lifted mine. "To freedom," I replied. He thought the conversation was over. It wasn't. It had just begun, because while he believed he had opened our marriage, I had started opening my eyes. I didn't cry that night. That surprised me. I lay awake beside him, listening to his breathing, slow, steady. The sleep of a man who believed the hardest part was over. I felt nothing, no rage, no heartbreak, just clarity. By morning, he was already lighter, humming in the kitchen, checking his phone too often, smiling at messages he thought I didn't notice. Freedom suited him. At least he thought it did. Around noon, I received an invitation. Not a text, not an email, a card. Thick paper, simple lettering. A charity gala downtown, black tie, private guest list. My name is printed cleanly at the center. No explanation was given for how they found me. No +1, just a time, a place. and a quiet certainty that I was expecting. That evening, I told my husband I was going out. He barely looked up. "Have fun," he said, distracted, already elsewhere. The venue was a renovated historic building. Stone walls, soft lighting, security that didn't announce itself, men in tailored suits, women who spoke softly and were listened to. Power doesn't shout, it circulates. I felt out of place for exactly 30 seconds. Then I felt something else, interest. Eyes followed me, not hungry, not judgmental, assessing. I was halfway through a glass of champagne when the room shifted, not abruptly, subtly. Conversations lowered, laughter softened. A path opened without anyone acknowledging it had. That was when I saw him. No entourage, no display, just presence. He didn't scan the room adjusted to him. He stopped a few steps away from me. "You came," he said. It wasn't a question. "I was invited," I replied. A faint smile touched his lips. "Yes," he said. "You were." He didn't offer his name. He didn't need to. I had already noticed how people watched him. Careful not to stare. Careful not to ignore. "You look calmer than most people who arrive here for the first time," he said. "I've had a long day," I answered. "Then you understand something already," he said. "Change doesn't always feel dramatic." He glanced at my hand. No ring, not yet removed, just absent. "Open marriage?" he asked casually. I froze, just for a beat. "Yes," I said. He nodded once. "Dangerous idea," he said. "For whom?" I asked. His eyes met mine. "For the person who thinks he controls the terms." A waiter passed. He took a drink and handed it to me instead. "Sit," he said, gesturing toward a quieter corner. I didn't hesitate. As we walked, I realized something unsettling. This wasn't a coincidence. This wasn't an attraction. This was timing. And whatever door my husband thought he had opened, I had just stepped through one. That didn't come with an exit sign. We didn't sit close. That was the first thing I noticed. No deliberate touch, no performative intimacy, just space. The kind of space that says control doesn't need proximity. People passed us without stopping, not because they didn't notice, because they knew better. "You're wondering who I am," he said. "I'm wondering why no one asks," I replied, a quiet smile. "Because questions are expensive," he said. He spoke like someone used to being understood without explanation. We started by discussing ordinary things at first. The city, the weather, the building we were in. But beneath every word there was weight. When he asked about my work, he listened. Not politely, precisely. When I spoke about my marriage, I didn't complain, I didn't have to. He already knew the outline. "Men who ask for open marriages," he said calmly, "rarely intend to share." I studied him. "And women who agree?" I asked. "They're usually underestimated," he replied. There was no flattery in his voice, just a fact. A man approached us then, nervous, overdressed. He didn't address me, he didn't interrupt. He leaned slightly toward him and spoke in a low voice. A few words, nothing dramatic. The man nodded quickly and walked away, pale. "What was that about?" I asked. "An unnecessary problem," he said. "Now solved. No pride, no explanation, power without performance. I don't date," he said suddenly. I raised an eyebrow. "That's disappointing," I said lightly. "For most people," he replied. "But you're not most people." I waited. He met my gaze. "You didn't come here looking to replace your husband," he said. "You came to see if something else existed." My breath caught, not because he was right, but because he said it without judgment. "I don't share what's mine," he continued, "and I don't borrow what belongs to someone else." The words were a warning, or an invitation. "Then why am I here?" I asked. He leaned back, considering. "Because your husband opened a door," he said, "and you were the one brave enough to walk through it." The music swelled slightly. The lights dimmed. I realized I wasn't being seduced. I was being evaluated. And for the first time in my life, that didn't make me feel small. It made me feel chosen. When the night ended, he didn't ask for my number. He didn't need to. As I stepped outside into the cool air, my phone buzzed. A message. You made the right choice tonight. No name, no signature, just certainty. And somewhere across the city, my husband still believed he was the one exploring. He had no idea who had just started watching him. He didn't contact me the next day. That was intentional. Power never rushes. By noon, my husband was already testing his freedom, a work meeting that ran late, a new shirt he didn't wear for me, a casual mention of someone I didn't need to worry about. I smiled, listened, said nothing. That evening, a car waited outside my building. Black, unmarked, engine running. The driver didn't ask my name. He opened the door. Inside, the city blurred past tinted windows. No music, no conversation. We stopped at a building with no sign, no valet, no crowd. Just a man at the door who nodded once and stepped aside. He was already there, standing by the window, jacket off, sleeves rolled just enough to suggest work had been done. You came, he said. I was curious, I replied. Curiosity is expensive, he said, but honesty costs more. He gestured for me to sit. This time, the distance between us was intentional. I won't pretend this is romance, he said, and I won't lie to you. Good. I don't offer protection lightly, he continued, and I don't involve myself in people's lives unless there's alignment. Alignment with what? I asked. He studied me for a long moment. With resolve. I felt my spine straighten. Your husband thinks an open marriage gives him options, he said. He's wrong. He stepped closer, not threatening, not seductive, just present. It gives you leverage, he said, if you understand how to use it. And if I don't, I asked. Then you walk away tonight, he replied. No harm, no memory. I believed him. That's the choice? I said. He nodded. No gifts, no secrets, no pretending. Then he said the line that settled everything. I don't share what's mine, and I don't take what hesitates. Silence filled the room. I thought of my husband's smile, the way he raised his glass to freedom. I thought of how small my life had been made, not by lack of love, but by a lack of respect. I stood. I won't hesitate, I said. He observed me. Then, for the first time, he smiled. Not wide, not warm, satisfied. Then understand this, he said. Once you step into my world, things around you will change. I'm counting on it, I replied. He extended his hand, not possessive, decisive. I took it, and somewhere across the city, my husband was still playing with the idea of choice. He didn't realize the terms had just been rewritten by someone who never asked permission. The changes didn't arrive like an explosion. They arrived in silence. The next morning, my husband's phone kept lighting up, then stopping. Messages left unread, calls unanswered. He blamed the network, the time zone, anyone but himself. I watched from the kitchen as he refreshed his inbox again and again. You seem distracted, I said. Just work, he replied too quickly. By noon, his meeting was canceled, not postponed, canceled. No explanation. That evening, I stepped out in a dress I hadn't worn before. Nothing dramatic, just intentional. Going out? He asked, pretending not to care. Yes, I said. With who? I paused. I don't think that matters, I replied calmly. The words hit him harder than I expected. He laughed, thin, uncertain. Already? He said. Guess we really are being honest. I didn't respond. The car was waiting again, different driver, same certainty. This time, the venue was a private restaurant. No menu, no prices. He was seated when I arrived. You're early, he said. I didn't want to be late, I replied. Good, he said. I don't like waiting. We didn't talk about feelings. We talked about patterns, people, businesses, the way influence travels without being seen. You'll notice things now, he said. who stops returning calls, who suddenly becomes polite. Like my husband, I asked. A corner of his mouth lifted. He hasn't noticed yet, he said, but he will. That night, my husband didn't sleep. He paced, checked his phone, checked it again. When I came home, he was sitting on the couch, pretending to watch television. "You're different," he said. "Am I?" I replied. "You're distant." I smiled softly. "That's freedom," I said. "Isn't that what you wanted?" He didn't answer. The next day, his assistant resigned. No warning, no explanation. His business partner needed space. His bank requested a meeting, not urgent, just necessary. He laughed it off, told me I was imagining things. But that night, when he thought I was asleep, I heard him whisper into his phone, "What's going on?" No one answered. Across the city, a system had begun to adjust. Not violently, not loudly, but decisively. And my husband, who believed power was loud and obvious, was learning a new lesson. Some forces don't announce themselves. They simply remove support, one connection at a time. I used to think power looked like money. Big houses, fast cars, men who talk too loudly at dinner parties. I was wrong. Real power looks like absence. The absence of resistance. The absence of questions. The absence of doors being closed in your face. He didn't introduce me to people. He let me observe them. At a private lounge overlooking the river, a city councilman approached our table. Not confidently, carefully. He didn't acknowledge me at first. Then he noticed how close I was sitting. His tone changed immediately. Apologies followed. Explanations no one had asked for. When he left, I asked, "Do they know who I am?" He shook his head. "They know who I'm willing to be seen with," he said. That was the difference. My husband still thought influence was something you demanded. He thought if he pushed harder, spoke louder, threatened enough, things would fall back into place. Instead, they kept slipping away. A zoning permit was delayed. A contract was put under review. A quiet audit request from a department he couldn't name. Nothing illegal, nothing dramatic. Just inconvenient. "Is this because of you?" I asked one night. He didn't answer right away. "I don't move pieces," he said finally. "I remove friction." I thought about my marriage. How much friction had been placed on me until I learned to shrink. This was the opposite. One evening, my husband showed up at the restaurant, uninvited. I hadn't told him where I was going. He stood awkwardly near the entrance, scanning the room. People noticed. Staff froze. Then one man made a phone call. My husband didn't last 5 minutes. When I got home, he exploded. "Who is he?" he demanded. "What have you done?" I set my bag down slowly. "You asked for an open marriage," I said. "This is what it looks like when I accept." He stared at me like I was a stranger. "You're enjoying this," he said. I didn't deny it. "I'm learning," I replied. That night, he slept on the couch, not because I asked, because he didn't know where he stood anymore, and that terrified him. Across town, the man who never raised his voice watched systems realign. He didn't need to threaten my husband. Men like my husband destroy themselves. When they realized they were never as important as they thought. The first question came late at night, not angry, not accusing, careful. "Who exactly is he?" my husband asked, standing in the doorway. I didn't look up from my phone. "He's someone you don't need to worry about," I said. I had heard those words before. They used to belong to him. That's when I saw it. The flicker in his eyes. Not jealousy, fear. Over the next few days, he tried to gather information, quietly at first. Phone calls that ended too fast, messages left unanswered, meetings rescheduled without explanation. He started coming home earlier, watching me, as if the answer might slip if he stared long enough. One evening, he poured himself a drink he didn't finish. "I asked around," he said casually. "No one knows who he is." I finally looked at him. "That's not true," I replied. "They know. They just won't tell you." His jaw tightened. "That's not how this works," he said. "I have connections." I smiled. So do I. That night, he didn't sleep. Neither did I, but for different reasons. The next morning, his company's board requested an emergency meeting. No agenda, no warning. By noon, his name was removed from a deal he had been negotiating for months. By evening, he was drinking again. "This isn't normal," he said. "This feels coordinated." I set the table calmly. "Maybe you're just not as central as you thought," I said. He slammed his glass down. "People don't just stop answering me." "They do," I replied. "When answering, you become risky." That word hit him hard. Risky. He stared at me as if seeing me for the first time. "You planned this," he said slowly. I stood and met his gaze. "No," I said. "You planned this when you asked for freedom." He left the apartment that night. Didn't say where he was going. Didn't say when he'd be back. An hour later, my phone buzzed. A single message. He's asking the wrong questions. Nothing else. I didn't respond. Because I understood something now. Men like my husband survive by knowing the rules of a system. Men like the one I was seeing own the system itself. And once you realize which side of power you're standing on, there's no unseeing it. The open marriage had given my husband permission to explore. What it gave me was leverage. And leverage, once applied, doesn't loosen. The board meeting ended without him. That was how he knew something was wrong. He sat in the car outside the office building, refreshing his email, rereading the calendar invite as if it might change its mind. It didn't. When he came home that night, he didn't slam the door. He didn't shout. He sat down slowly like someone misjudging the weight of a chair. "They removed me from the project," he said. I kept chopping vegetables. "Temporarily?" I asked. "No," he replied. "Indefinitely?" There it was. The first word he couldn't explain away. He tried to laugh it off, said it was restructuring, politics, bad timing, but his voice cracked on the last excuse. I watched him reach for his phone, then stop himself, like he already knew no one was coming to save him. The next morning, his keycard didn't work. Security was polite, embarrassingly polite. A supervisor walked him out, not fired, not accused, just removed. That afternoon, the bank froze one of his business accounts. Routine review, they said. The phrase meant nothing, which was the point. He finally asked the question he'd been avoiding. "Is this because of him?" I turned to face him. "Do you really want the answer?" I asked. "Or do you want something you can deny?" He swallowed. That was enough. That night, he searched my things. Drawers, closets, my phone while I showered. I let him. Power shows itself when you don't need to hide. When I came back into the bedroom, he was sitting on the edge of the bed. "I know you're doing this," he said quietly. "I just don't know how." I sat beside him. "You wanted honesty," I said. "This is what happens when you invite it in." His hands were shaking now, not rage, shock. Because men like him believe control disappears gradually. They don't expect it to vanish all at once. My phone buzzed. I didn't look at it. He did. "Who is he?" he whispered. "What does he want?" I stood. "He doesn't want anything," I said. "He already has it." That was the moment my husband understood something terrifying. This wasn't revenge fueled by emotion. This was a consequence powered by proximity. And once power decides you're inconvenient, it doesn't argue. It erases. He didn't leave the apartment the next day. That alone told me everything. The man who used to rush out early, full of purpose, now sat at the kitchen table staring at nothing. When his phone rang, he flinched. When it didn't, he stared at it longer. By afternoon, he tried a different approach. "This has gone far enough," he said quietly. "You've made your point." Point. As if my life had been a lesson he was entitled to end. "I didn't make a point," I replied. "I made a choice." He rubbed his face, exhaustion etched into every movement. "Let's reset," he said. "We can close the marriage. Go back to how things were." How things were. When I existed in the background. When he explored, and I waited. "You asked for freedom," I said. "I didn't ask you to like the result." He stood up abruptly. "This isn't fair," he snapped. "You're destroying everything." I met his eyes. "No," I said calmly. "I stopped protecting you from consequences." That's when his tone changed. Softer, desperate. "Tell him to stop," he said. "Whatever this is, tell him to stop." I felt almost sorry for him. Almost. "You still don't understand," I said. "He's not doing this for me." He sank back into his chair. "Then why?" he whispered. "Because systems don't tolerate instability," I replied. "And you've become unstable." The word landed hard. He tried anger again, threats, accusations. "You're using him," he said. "You don't even know what he is." I smiled faintly. "I know exactly what he is," I said. "And more importantly, I know what you aren't." Silence filled the apartment. By nightfall, he was drinking. By midnight, he was crying. By morning, he was gone. No note, no call. Just absence. And absence, I had learned, was the clearest signal of defeat. My phone buzzed once. He's exhausting his options. I set the phone down. Because negotiation only works when you still have leverage, and my husband had already spent his. He disappeared for 3 days. No texts, no calls, no late-night arguments echoing through the apartment. That worried me more than his presence ever had. Men like him don't retreat to reflect. They retreat to the plot. On the 4th day, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. "Mrs. Hale?" a man asked politely. "This is Detective Ruiz. We'd like to ask you a few questions." I knew immediately. My husband had made a report. Not about money, not about contracts, about me. At the station, the questions were careful. How long had I known him? What kind of relationship was it? Had I noticed any changes in my husband's behavior recently? I answered calmly, truthfully. "Yes," I said. "My husband asked for an open marriage." "Yes," I added. "I accepted." The detective studied me for a long moment. "You understand why this looks complicated," he said. "I understand why it looks desperate," I replied. He didn't argue. 2 hours later, I walked out untouched. Outside, a black car waited across the street. Not for me, for him. That night, my husband finally came home. He looked frantic, unshaven, eyes darting like prey. "They talked to me," he said the moment he saw me. "They asked questions about him." I didn't move. "You called the police," I said. "I had to," he snapped. "This isn't normal. People don't just lose everything overnight." "No," I replied. "They lose it when they've been borrowing power instead of owning it." He stared at me like I had spoken another language. "You don't know who you're involved with," he said, voice cracking. "You're playing with something dangerous." I stepped closer. "So are you," I said. "And you started first." That's when his phone rang. He froze, answered it slowly. "Yes, I understand. Of course." When he hung up, his hands were shaking. "They want to see me tomorrow," he whispered. "Who?" I asked, though I already knew. He looked at me with something close to terror. "Everyone," he said. That was the mistake. He tried to turn the system against power, and the system doesn't like being reminded of those who actually run it. He didn't sleep that night. I could tell by the way he sat on the edge of the bed, fully dressed, shoes still on, staring at the floor like it might open up and swallow him. "Do you know what they asked me?" he said suddenly. I didn't answer. "They didn't accuse me of anything," he continued, voice hollow. "They just asked me to explain myself." That was worse. When accusations come, you fight them. When explanations are demanded, the outcome is already decided. The meeting the next morning wasn't at an office. It was at a private building with no logo and too much security for something informal. He didn't invite me. He didn't need to. When he came back that afternoon, he looked like someone who had aged a decade in a single day. "They know everything," he said quietly. "What things?" I asked. "All of it," he replied. "The deals I cut corners on, the favors I thought were small enough to forget, The names I thought would never connect. He laughed once, a broken sound. I thought I was important, he said. I thought people needed me. I sat across from him. They needed what you provided, I said. That's not the same thing. His phone buzzed again. This time, he didn't answer. I tried to explain, he said, told them I could fix it. I shook my head. You don't fix trust, I said. You either have it or you don't. He finally looked at me then, really looked. You planned this, he whispered. I didn't deny it. I prepared for it, I corrected. You created the conditions. Silence settled between us, heavy, final. That evening, the email arrived. Suspension pending review, assets under temporary restriction, travel limitations advised. Each line removed another piece of the man he used to be. He closed his laptop slowly. What happens now? He asked. I stood. Now? I said. Now you live in the world you thought you controlled. My phone buzzed softly. A single message. It's almost over. I didn't reply. Because I could already feel it. The walls weren't just closing in on him, they were sealing. And once that happens, there's no door left to knock on. He started packing that night. Not everything, just the things he thought still belonged to him. Watches, documents, a laptop he hadn't opened in years. I'm staying with a friend, he said, avoiding my eyes, just until this blows over. It was almost sad. How much faith he still had in the temporary. By morning, his friend wasn't answering. The hotel reservation he made was suddenly unavailable. The credit card declined on the second attempt. He stood in the hallway, suitcase half-zipped, breathing too fast. This isn't possible, he kept saying. This can't be happening. I leaned against the wall and watched. It's been happening for a while, I said. You just weren't included. That afternoon, he finally asked the question he should have asked weeks ago. Why him? He said. Why did he choose you? I considered it carefully. He didn't choose me because I was convenient, I said. He chose me because I was observant. He frowned. What does that mean? It means, I continued, while you were busy opening doors for yourself, I was watching who controlled the hallway. His shoulders sagged. You knew, he said. You knew I wasn't as powerful as I pretended. I knew you borrowed power, I replied, and borrowed things always get reclaimed. His phone buzzed. One final time. He read the message slowly, then handed the phone to me. It was brief. We are withdrawing all remaining support effective immediately. No signature, no explanation, just a full stop. He sank onto the floor. For the first time since I'd known him, there was no performance left. No one's coming, he whispered. I crouched in front of him. No, I said gently. That's what power looks like when it's done with you. Later that evening, I received a call. Not from him, from the man who never explained himself. You'll need to be somewhere else tonight, he said calmly. For a while. I didn't ask why. I understand, I said. As I packed my own bag, I realized something strange. I wasn't running. I was relocating. And there's a difference. Because this story was never about an open marriage. It was about visibility. My husband thought he was choosing freedom, what he never saw. Who was watching him the entire time? The place he sent me to wasn't hidden. It was insulated. A quiet residence overlooking the water. Too clean, too calm. Security existed without being visible. Doors locked without sound. This is temporary, he said when I arrived. Until the noise settles. I nodded. I had stopped asking questions, because questions are for people without leverage. That night, my husband called. From a blocked number. I almost didn't answer. Almost. You need to come back, he said immediately. They're blaming me for things I didn't even know were happening. His voice cracked halfway through the sentence. They're saying I used names I shouldn't have used. I sat on the edge of the bed, looking out at the dark water. You always did that, I said quietly. Dropped names like armor. Silence. They asked me about you, he said finally. I waited. They wanted to know how much you knew, he continued. What you'd seen, what you'd heard. I smiled. And what did you tell them? I asked. That you were just my wife, he said. The words tasted bitter even through the phone. Then you failed again, I replied calmly. He sucked in a breath. You think you're untouchable now, he said. You think he'll protect you forever. I didn't raise my voice. I don't need protection, I said. I have positioning. He didn't understand that word. He never had. The next day, his name appeared in places it had never been before. Not headlines, footnotes, regulatory filings, board meeting minutes, places where reputations go to fade quietly. His accounts were converted to custodial review, his passport flagged, no charges, no drama, just removal. By evening, his friends stopped calling. By nightfall, his lawyer stopped returning messages. And in the quiet that followed, something else surfaced. Truth. A message reached me through a channel I hadn't known existed. He's asking for mercy now. I closed the message. Mercy is for people who admit their limits. My husband never had. That night, standing alone by the window, I finally understood the scale of what had happened. I hadn't escaped my marriage. I had outgrown it. And the man who once believed he was the center of my world was now orbiting something far larger, hoping not to be crushed by it. He showed up unannounced. That was how I knew he was desperate. Security didn't stop him immediately. They let him wait. That was worse. When he was finally allowed inside, he looked smaller somehow, not weaker, emptier. You can't hide here forever, he said as soon as he saw me. This isn't your world. I didn't stand, didn't flinch. You're right, I said calmly. It's not mine. That confused him. It's his, I continued, and you don't belong in it. His jaw tightened. I made calls, he said. People you don't know, people who don't care about him. I tilted my head slightly. And? I asked. They warned me, he admitted, told me to walk away. I waited. But I didn't, he said, eyes bright with a last flicker of pride. I reminded them who I was. There it was. The mistake. He still believed his name carried weight. They didn't threaten me, he said quietly. They asked one question. I said nothing. Why would you touch something that isn't yours anymore? His voice broke. That night, he didn't leave in anger. He left in silence. An hour later, my phone rang. Not a message, a call. You were right, he said. He tried to lean on people who don't like being reminded. I exhaled slowly. What happens now? I asked. Now, he replied. The door he forced open closes. I understood immediately. My husband didn't just lose influence, he violated a boundary. And boundaries, in that world, aren't negotiated. They're enforced. The next morning, his remaining accounts were locked, not frozen, seized. Legal notices arrived without emotion, neutral language, total authority. By noon, his lawyer withdrew. By evening, he stopped answering calls. And by nightfall, his name disappeared from places it once lived comfortably. I stood alone on the balcony, the city glowing beneath me. This wasn't revenge, this was gravity. My husband spent his life believing power was something you could grab. He never learned the truth. Power decides who gets to stand near it. And once it decides you don't, you fall. The city didn't react. That was the strangest part. No sirens, no headlines, no spectacle, just quiet. The kind of quiet that follows a decision already made. I didn't hear from my husband for 2 days, then 3, then a week. When his name finally appeared, it wasn't where it once lived. It was on a legal notice forwarded to me by a third party. Formal, cold. He had been removed from all remaining executive roles. Not suspended, removed. No explanation offered, none required. I read it once and closed the file. That night, he called, from a number I didn't recognize. I don't have anywhere else to go, he said. No anger, no pride, just truth. I know, I replied. You did this, he said quietly. I considered correcting him. I didn't. Do you remember? I asked instead. The night you asked for an open marriage? Silence. You said you wanted honesty, I continued. No pretending, no protection. My voice stayed calm. This is honesty, I said, and this is life without protection. He exhaled sharply. I thought you'd stay, he whispered. I thought you were safe. I was, I said, just not for you. He started to say my name. I ended the call, not because I hated him, but because there was nothing left to negotiate. The next morning, I was given a choice, not a command, a choice. You can disappear, he said, change names, start clean. I looked out at the water. And the alternative? I asked. You stay visible, he replied, not as someone's wife, as someone known. I didn't answer right away. For the first time, the decision was entirely mine. No pressure, no fear. I thought of the woman I used to be. Quiet, patient, invisible. I turned back. I'm done disappearing, I said. He nodded once. Then this ends today, he replied. When the call ended, I felt it. Not relief, finality. My husband didn't lose me when he asked for freedom. He lost me when he assumed I had nowhere else to stand. And now, there was nothing left of the life we built together, except for the lesson he never learned. Some doors don't open outward. They close behind you. The morning felt ordinary. That's how I knew it was over. No tension in the air, no waiting for the next call, no sense of something unfinished. The world had moved on. I walked through the city alone, unnoticed, unbothered. For the first time in years, that felt like freedom, not weakness. My husband never contacted me again, not to apologize, not to threaten, not to explain. Men like him don't speak when there's nothing left to negotiate. I heard about him once, months later. A name mentioned quietly, a cautionary story told without detail. Someone who used to matter, someone who no longer did. I didn't feel satisfaction. I felt clarity. He thought an open marriage meant expanding his options. He thought power was something you could sample without cost. He thought I would remain where he left me. What he never understood was I wasn't waiting to be chosen. I was waiting to see clearly. I didn't win because I replaced him. I won because I stepped into a world where I was never invisible to begin with. The man who stood beside me never claimed me, never saved me, never fought for me. He simply saw me and made space. And sometimes, that's the most dangerous thing of all. My husband asked for freedom. What he gave me was vision. And once you see the structure behind power, behind loyalty, behind silence, you never confuse love with safety again. I didn't leave that marriage angry. I left it awake.